I was thinking today about how a lot of our favorite perfumes are attached to scent associations and general memories or recollections of what those perfumes might remind you of. But there are several perfumes that I own and wear and enjoy that I have very, very specific memories attached to. And I'm sure that this is the case with everyone. Now, I have over 60 bottles of perfume that I own. I have probably as much samples that I regularly test and wear and rotate through my wardrobe. But not all of them are linked to a very particular memory, and I thought it might be interesting. This is a little bit of a vlog style video. I won't be going into reviewing or description of any of the perfumes, but I do want to mention a few of them because I have very, very specific memories attached to them. What I'm going to talk about first are perfumes that I have worn. In this case, I no longer own or have decants or samples of that I have very, very specific compliment memories. Now, the only time this has ever happened to me where I got complimented on the same perfume more than twice actually within the space of a couple of hours. For starters, I very, very seldomly get a compliment on the perfume I'm wearing. But this particular day, I was wearing Green Irish Tweed by Creed. And I was ordering a coffee, and the barista was making my coffee for me, like could smell me from a couple of feet away, I guess. And I got a compliment. And then like 20 minutes later, I was back in the office talking to a couple of people, and I got another compliment on the perfume. Now, I don't think I ever overspray perfume, and Green Irish Tweed is one of those perfumes that well, at least the version that I had really projects quite well, because I know that my 15-year-old son actually likes wearing Green Irish Tweed. I gave him a decant of it, and whenever he wears it, I immediately smell it on him. So it has pretty good projection and is the type of perfume that gets noticed. Now, it's compared to all the stuff that you read and hear about how Creed's Aventus gets a lot of compliments, I find that when I used to wear both of those perfumes, Aventus is a little bit more subtle, or at least maybe I get a little bit more anosmic to Aventus. A funny story with Aventus is that I actually did receive a few compliments when I wore that particular perfume, but interestingly enough, those compliments only ever came from other men and never from the opposite sex. So I thought that was interesting because I very, very distinctly remember it, because compliments are don't come along very often in terms of the perfume I wear. And that particular day, the Green Irish Tweed got me 2 within the space of an hour. The other perfume compliment story that I have was with Terre d'Hermès Parfum, the Pure Parfum version. And on this occasion, I had sprayed that in the morning. So probably, if it's anything like when I spray now, it's probably about 7 a.m. in the morning. And that particular day, that's all I wore. So by about 12 hours later, so it was early evening, I had long stopped smelling it on myself, and I pretty much had figured that it was it had gone, it had burned off my skin, and I went to see a friend of mine, and as soon as the door opened to go into their place, they commented on the smell hitting them. So clearly I had some sort of nose fatigue from Terre de Mes Parfum, and they could still smell it, and it could well be the amount of isoe super that's in that perfume that was still lingering long after I'd stopped smelling anything from the perfume. One other compliment and anti-compliment story was when I was wearing Parfum de Marly's Leighton. I had a sample of it and I was testing it, and interestingly enough, that perfume I had sprayed on, and when I was talking to someone at close quarters, probably they were standing a couple of feet away from me, I got a compliment on how good I smelled, and then literally 5 minutes later I walked out into an open office space, so there were people around, but they were sort of meters away from me, and someone sort of vaguely commented generally, they didn't know it was coming from me, and basically yelled out, who's wearing too much Axe body spray today. So I thought that was funny. So on one hand, at close quarters, it smelled good to someone. On the other hand, it just smelled like I was a teenager trying to impress some girls. That's my compliment story. Other specific memories I have are linked to different occasions. So the specific memory I have with Fahrenheit, Dior Fahrenheit. Now, I've worn this for years and years and years, but I'm always going to remember that when I first started buying perfumes and growing my the amount of bottles that I own and wear, I didn't at that time have a bottle of Fahrenheit, and my daughter, who was probably about 10 at the time, 10 or 11 at the time, wanted to buy me a Christmas present, and she went shopping with her grandmother, and decided that she was going to smell a bunch of stuff and pick whatever she liked the best as a gift for me, and she chose Fahrenheit. So that's how I came to have a bottle in my collection. And speaking of my daughter, when about 4 years ago, we both went to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the play that came after the movies. And for whatever reason, I always remember the scent that I wore that particular night. I don't know why, because it was like I do heaps of stuff. I've done heaps of stuff with my kids and gone places with them, but for some reason on that particular evening, I remember that I wore Parfum d'Empier's Ombre Rousse, and that memory's just kind of stuck with me all that time. Like that particular night, I wore this perfume. Now, I have done lots of things over the years, gone to places, gone to parties, out to dinner, whatever, and it's not like I remember the perfume I've worn for those particular things. But for whatever reason, that memory has stuck with me. Other memories I have are like the first time that I smelled particular perfumes. Now, obviously there's a first time of me smelling every perfume that I own, but I distinctly remember a couple, and they are the very first time I smelled Au Popinac. The very first time I smelled Au Popinac by Santa Maria Novella, I was actually in Florence and in their original store. So it was like pretty special to be in Florence in the original Santa Maria Novella premises. and trying the perfumes there, and this was the one that I was captivated by, and just being there, that's obviously a memory that's going to stick with me forever. The first time I ever smelled a Popinax on a probably less romantic occasion. I always remember the first time that I smelled Gucci's Memoir d'une Odeur, and I remember because it had only just come out, and I was actually on my way to Italy for that particular trip, and there was a stopover at Singapore airport, and it was the middle of the night, so there was hardly anyone in the terminal, but the duty-free stores were all open, and here's me kind of walking around half awake, half asleep from not sleeping on the plane for 10 hours, and walking into a duty-free store, and I saw that perfume was in the store. It hadn't been released in Australia yet, so it was the first time that I'd seen the bottle in person, and I sprayed it on, and so that's my memory. I remember when I smelled Memoir d'une Odeur in Changi Airport sometime in September 2019. I know it's weird what sticks in my head, but that's just the way I work. Then I have a very distinct memory. The next couple are to do with that particular trip to Italy, but my next memory was buying this bottle of Equipage Geranium by Hermes in the city of Torino, and I was out, walking around town, and I'd been to the department store, done a bit of shopping, and I picked up this bottle, and I decided to stop and have lunch at some random cafe, have a pizza, and I very much remember sitting there admiring my new bottle, my first bottle of an Hermes perfume, and it was just a nice memory to have, and I'll always remember being in Turin for that. Then, speaking of Turin, I bought I first smelled my sandalwood cologne by Gio F. Trumper, and I don't have it with me, but I'll put a picture up on the screen in case you don't know what I'm talking about. And this was the perfume I remember spraying on the back of my hand at this most amazing it's still probably one of the more fantastic perfumeries I've been in. It's called Floris Concept House. No relation to the perfume brand Floris, but it's called Floris Concept House. I'll put a picture up on the screen just to give you some idea of what it's like. But it was just this huge perfumery. It had like a little cafe section as well if you wanted to have a break and have a coffee in between sniffing stuff. But that was my first time in a perfumery that had so many different niche brands that prior to that I had not been exposed to, just because back in Australia at that time, we're talking only like four and a half years ago, there was none of those brands available here to smell. So you can just imagine I could have spent the whole day there. I nearly did anyway, but I do remember distinctly spraying on sandalwood cologne on the back of my hand and having that wafting up for the rest of the day. Staying in Italy, when I was in Florence, my first morning in Florence, I woke up really early. I normally do wake up early, and I wake up usually dawn. I can see the sunrise, and I decided to leave the Airbnb that I was staying in, go for a walk along the river, the Arno River, heading towards the Ponte Vecchio, and I got to the bridge, and at that time of the day, I mean, usually later on during the day, that place is packed, and like there's just like a sea of people on that bridge. But at that particular time of day, it was empty. I had a beautiful view of the sun coming up from the east, and I can post a picture up as well. But I very much remember wearing Chanel's Antaeus that morning, and there's just another memory that sticks with me. So it's not so much that I have a scent association with. I want to differentiate between scent associations and distinct memories. Like I don't wear Antaeus and think of Florence, but I do know that I wore it that particular morning, if that makes sense. The final memory that I want to talk about is not a great one, but it is involving one of my very, very favorite perfumes, 1740 by Histoire de Parfum. And this was back home in Melbourne, and it was middle of summer or end of summer, and there was a music festival, a one-day music festival happening. And I had sprayed this on in the morning. So usually even in summer, the mornings are pretty mild, and you can still spray on stuff that's quite heavy like 1740. And I'd sprayed that on that morning. And I do remember walking through crowds of people, and for the very first time wearing this, feeling pretty self-conscious about how strong this was projecting off my skin in the heat. The sun was beating down on me, and I suddenly realized that I might be a little bit smelly, more than smelling good. But then I realized that I was at a music festival, and there were a whole bunch of other smells wafting around, and probably didn't matter. But for whatever reason, maybe because I felt I really felt conscious of what was coming off my skin, that memory has stuck with me with 1740. And that is pretty much my random musings for the evening. I thought it was just interesting because I had not thought about it that much before today. Today I was thinking, I can't remember what triggered this idea for a video, but I thought I'd share that with you. And obviously I do want to hear, because I can't believe that none of you have these type of memories either. So this is something I really want to see in the comments. If you have memories like this with particular perfumes, please share them, as long as they're not too personal, but you can share personal stories as well. And maybe it's an idea for a live stream, and I can get some guests on and get them to share their very, very particular perfume tales with us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for indulging me again. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.